In the shadows of the galaxy, where ancient secrets whisper through the darkness and power corrupts even the wisest souls, there exists a legend so profound that it changed the very course of galactic history. This is not the story of a Jedi who fell to darkness, but of a Sith Lord whose obsession with immortality would reshape the galaxy itself. This is the tale of Darth Plagueis the Wise, a being so powerful he could influence the very building blocks of life, yet whose greatest achievement would ultimately become his most tragic downfall. Most Star Wars fans know the name Darth Plagueis from a single chilling scene. Chancellor Palpatine, speaking in hushed tones to a troubled Anakin Skywalker, recounts what he calls the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise. But that brief telling only scratches the surface of a story that spans centuries and reaches into the deepest mysteries of the Force itself. Today, we're going to explore the complete saga of the Sith Lord who dared to challenge death itself. Our story begins in an era when the Sith operated from the shadows, following the ancient rule of two established by Darth Bane. For 1,000 years, the Sith had hidden in plain sight, with only a master and apprentice existing at any given time, plotting the downfall of the Jedi Order and the Republic they served. It was into this tradition of secrecy and patience that Darth Plagueis was born. Plagueis was a moon, a species known for their elongated skulls and calculating intelligence. His real name has been lost to history, consumed by the darkness of his Sith identity. But what we do know is that he was trained by the Sith Master, Darth Tenebris. Under Tenebris's guidance, Plagueis learned not just the ways of the dark side, but developed a fascination with the scientific underpinnings of the Force itself. What set Plagueis apart from other Sith Lords was his unique approach to power. While most Sith sought dominion through strength, fear, and political manipulation, Plagueis was drawn to something far more fundamental: the mystery of life itself. He became obsessed with understanding how the Force created and sustained life, and more importantly, how that process could be controlled and manipulated. This obsession led him down paths that even other Sith Lords found disturbing. Plagueis conducted what can only be described as unnatural experiments, probing the very essence of life through his connection to the dark side of the Force. He studied the midichlorians, those microscopic organisms that served as conduits for Force sensitivity, with the intensity of a scientist and the ruthlessness of a Sith Lord. But Plagueis wasn't content to work alone. During the High Republic era, he took on an apprentice known only as the Stranger, or by the pseudonym Chimere. This former Jedi had fallen to the dark side and become one of Plagueis' students. However, their relationship was complicated and secretive, with the Stranger preferring not to directly identify as a Sith, while Plagueis lurked in the shadows, watching and waiting. The dynamic between Plagueis and the Stranger revealed much about the Sith Master's character. He was a being who preferred to operate from the darkness, observing rather than directly intervening. When the Stranger took on a former Jedi Padawan named Verosha Anisea as his own acolyte, Plagueis watched from the shadows of their cave dwelling, his yellow and red eyes gleaming with the malevolent intelligence that would eventually reshape the galaxy. This tendency to observe and manipulate from behind the scenes would become Plagueis' signature approach to power. He understood that true control came not from being seen, but from being the unseen hand that guided events from the darkness. It was a philosophy that would serve him well as he prepared to take on his most important and ultimately most dangerous apprentice. The precise moment when Plagueis encountered Sheev Palpatine remains shrouded in mystery, but what we do know is that the Sith Master recognized something extraordinary in this young human from Naboo. Palpatine possessed not only a strong connection to the Force, but the kind of cold, calculating intelligence that could serve the Sith's long-term goals. More importantly, he had the political acumen necessary to infiltrate the highest levels of Republic government. Taking the Sith name Darth Sidious, Palpatine became more than just Plagueis' apprentice. He became his partner in the most ambitious project ever attempted by the Sith Order. Together, master and student worked to unlock the ultimate secret: immortality itself. This wasn't simply a desire to extend life, but a fundamental rejection of the natural order of the universe. The partnership between Plagueis and Sidious represented something new in Sith tradition. While the rule of two typically involved a constant struggle between master and apprentice, with the younger eventually killing the elder, Plagueis envisioned something different. He taught Sidious that if they worked together, with one serving as bait for the dark side and the other as a vessel, they could harness the full power of the dark side and rule together for 10,000 years. This vision was partly inspired by an ancient Sith text known as the Doctrine of the Dyad, which described a force bond so powerful it could transcend death itself. Plagueis attempted to create such a bond with Sidious, a connection that would make them stronger together than they could ever be apart. However, despite his vast knowledge and power, this particular goal would prove beyond even his considerable abilities. As their partnership deepened, Plagueis shared his most guarded secrets with Sidious. He revealed his research into what he called transference, a force power that allowed a Sith Lord to transfer their consciousness from one body to another, essentially using physical forms as disposable vessels for their immortal spirit. This technique represented the culmination of centuries of Sith research into cheating death. But Plagueis' greatest discovery was his ability to influence the midichlorians directly. Through careful manipulation of these microscopic organisms, he could actually create life from nothing. This power was so rare and so profound that it bordered on divine, the ability to bring forth life where none had existed before, and to sustain life even when it should have ended. The implications of this power were staggering. Plagueis could prevent the ones he cared about from dying, healing mortal wounds and extending life far beyond its natural span. He could create entirely new forms of life, tailored to his specific needs and desires. In essence, he had become a dark god, wielding power over life and death that rivaled the Force itself. Yet for all his power, Plagueis began to develop a peculiar fear. He came to believe that the Force itself might strike back at him for his manipulations. This paranoia grew as his abilities increased, creating a cycle where his power made him more fearful, and his fear drove him to seek even greater power as protection against the Force's potential revenge. While Plagueis delved deeper into his esoteric research, Sidious was building his own power base in the political arena. With his master's arrangement, he became the senator representing Naboo and the entire Shamel sector, a position that gave him access to the highest levels of Republic government. This political career served multiple purposes. It provided cover for his Sith activities, allowed him to gather intelligence on potential threats, and positioned him to execute the Sith's long-term plan of overthrowing the Republic. The relationship between master and apprentice during this period was complex and evolving. Plagueis genuinely believed he was grooming Sidious to be his eternal partner, sharing power in a way that previous Sith Lords had never attempted. He was so focused on his research and so confident in his own abilities that he failed to notice the subtle changes in his apprentice's behavior. Sidious, meanwhile, was learning everything he could from his master while secretly preparing for the traditional Sith betrayal. He studied Plagueis' techniques, absorbed his knowledge, and built his own understanding of the dark side's deepest mysteries. But unlike previous apprentices who might challenge their masters directly, Sidious was patient and cunning, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The irony of Plagueis' situation was profound. Here was a being who had unlocked the secret of immortality, who could prevent others from dying and create life itself, yet he remained vulnerable to the most basic of Sith traditions. His very success had made him complacent. His power had bred overconfidence, and his trust in Sidious had blinded him to the danger that lay closest to him. The end came not in a dramatic lightsaber duel or force lightning battle, but in the quiet darkness of Plagueis' own apartment. While the Sith Master slept, confident in his power and secure in his trust of his apprentice, Sidious struck with cold, calculated precision. There were no last words, no dramatic confrontations, just a swift, merciless execution that ended one of the most powerful Sith Lords in galactic history. The murder of Darth Plagueis represented more than just another cycle of the Rule of Two. It was the culmination of years of planning and the beginning of the final phase of the Sith's millennium-long plot against the Republic and the Jedi. With his master's death, Sidious inherited not only the title of Sith Master, but also all of Plagueis's research, including his unfinished work on immortality. But Sidious gained more than just knowledge from his betrayal. He acquired Plagueis's protocol droid, 11-4D, a multi-limbed assistant that had served the former Sith Master faithfully. More importantly, he inherited the network of contacts, resources, and secret facilities that Plagueis had built over his long lifetime. In killing his master, Sidious had become the sole inheritor of centuries of Sith planning and preparation. The timing of Plagueis' death was crucial to everything that followed. Sidious already had his eye on a new apprentice, a young Dathomirian Zabrak named Maul, whom he had acquired from Mother Talzin when the boy was still a child. With Plagueis dead, Sidious was free to mold Maul into the weapon he needed for the next phase of his plan. Yet, even in death, Plagueis continued to influence galactic events. The knowledge he had imparted to Sidious about midichlorian manipulation may have had consequences that neither Sith Lord anticipated. Some have theorized that Plagueis' experiments with creating life through the Force led to an unexpected reaction. The creation of Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, prophesied to bring balance to the Force. Whether this theory is true or not, there's no denying that Plagueis' legacy shaped the events that would follow his death. His research into immortality would prove crucial to Sidious's own survival, and his political arrangements had positioned his apprentice perfectly to execute the final phase of the Sith Grand Plan. The story of Plagueis' discoveries didn't end with his death. It became a weapon in his former apprentice's hands. Years later, as Chancellor of the Republic, Sidious would use the tale of his master's abilities to manipulate Anakin Skywalker, playing on the young Jedi's fear of losing his wife Padme in childbirth. The tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise became the key that unlocked Anakin's fall to the dark side. In that pivotal conversation, Sidious revealed the truth about his former master's abilities, how Plagueis could influence midichlorians to create life and prevent death. But he also revealed the ironic tragedy at the heart of the Sith Lord story. Despite all his power over life and death, Plagueis couldn't save himself from his own apprentice's betrayal. When Anakin asked if it was possible to learn such power, Sidious's response was telling, "Not from a Jedi." This wasn't just a statement about Jedi philosophy. It was a recognition that the power Plagueis had discovered was fundamentally opposed to the natural order that the Jedi sought to preserve. The Jedi accepted death as a natural part of life, while the Sith sought to conquer it through domination and control. The manipulation of Anakin Skywalker represented the ultimate fruition of everything Plagueis had worked toward. Through his former apprentice, the Sith Lord's legacy achieved its greatest triumph, the fall of the Chosen One and the destruction of the Jedi Order. The Republic fell, replaced by Sidious's galactic empire, and the Sith ruled the galaxy openly for the first time in a millennium. Yet even this victory carried the seeds of its own destruction. One of the few Jedi to survive Order 66 was a Padawan named Farron Barr, who began investigating how the Jedi had fallen so quickly and completely. His research led him to discover the existence of Darth Plagueis, adding the dead Sith Lord to his list of individuals involved in the Republic's fall. Even in death, Plagueis' shadow stretched across the galaxy. As the years passed and Sidious consolidated his power as emperor, he often found himself thinking about his former master. He genuinely came to appreciate Plagueis as both a planner and a prophet, though he noted with some irony that his master had never foreseen that his apprentice would become emperor. The daily realities of ruling an empire were far removed from the esoteric research that had consumed Plagueis' attention. Sidious's reflections on his master weren't purely sentimental. He had inherited Plagueis' obsession with immortality, but his goals went even further. Where Plagueis had sought merely to cheat death, Sidious desired the power to reshape reality itself, to create a universe of his own design where the Force could never strike back against him. The pursuit of these godlike ambitions led Sidious to continue his master's research on Exegol, the hidden Sith world where he established his secret stronghold. There, cultists working in the catacombs beneath the Sith Citadel would chant the names of ancient Sith lords, including Plagueis, as they labored to unlock the deepest mysteries of the dark side. When Sidious was finally killed by a redeemed Anakin Skywalker during the Battle of Endor, the techniques he had learned from Plagueis proved their worth as he fell down the reactor shaft of the second Death Star. Sidious called upon all his power to transfer his consciousness to a cloned body waiting on Exegol. Plagueis' research had finally achieved its ultimate purpose, allowing a Sith Lord to cheat death itself. But immortality came at a price that Plagueis had never fully understood. The transfer was imperfect, leaving Sidious trapped in a decaying body that could barely contain his immense dark side power. In his weakened state, Sidious wondered if perhaps his old master was having the last laugh after all, proving that even the power to conquer death couldn't protect the Sith from the consequences of their actions. The imperfection of Sidious's resurrection demonstrated the fundamental flaw in the Sith approach to immortality. They sought to dominate and control the natural order, but their methods were crude and ultimately self-defeating. True immortality required not just power, but wisdom and acceptance, qualities that the Sith's philosophy of domination could never provide. During his years of exile on Exegol, Sidious continued to study his master's techniques while developing his own improvements. He created an entire fleet of star destroyers equipped with planet-killing weapons, built a cult of loyal followers in the Sith Eternal, and prepared for his ultimate return to power. All of this was built upon the foundation of knowledge that Plagueis had provided. When Rey Skywalker finally confronted the resurrected Emperor on Exegol, she discovered the truth about how he had returned from death. Through their connection, she was able to read his mind and understand that his survival was based on the techniques Plagueis had developed. But she also learned something that neither Sith Lord had fully grasped, that the power they wielded came with an inevitable price. The final destruction of Sidious by Rey, using the collective power of all the Jedi who had come before, represented the ultimate failure of Plagueis' vision. Despite all his knowledge and power, despite successfully cheating death and passing that knowledge to his apprentice, the Sith way ultimately proved to be unsustainable. Their pursuit of immortality through domination and control had led not to eternal life, but to eternal conflict and eventual destruction. In the aftermath of the Battle of Exegol, archaeologists working on the Exegol excavation project discovered a damaged file about Darth Plagueis in the ruins of the Sith Citadel's arcane library. Though much of the information was corrupted or deliberately defaced, what remained provided crucial insights into the hierarchy of the Sith Lords and their methods of operation. The discovery of this file represented more than just historical interest. It was proof that Plagueis' influence extended far beyond his own lifetime. His research, his techniques, and his philosophy had shaped the entire final act of the Sith's war against the galaxy. Even in ultimate defeat, his shadow loomed large over the events that finally brought balance to the Force. What made Darth Plagueis such a fascinating and terrifying figure wasn't just his immense power, but the way he embodied the fundamental contradictions of the Sith philosophy. He was brilliant yet blind, powerful yet vulnerable, wise in the ways of the Force, yet foolish about the nature of trust and loyalty. His greatest strength, his ability to manipulate life itself, was also connected to his greatest weakness, his inability to see the danger in his own apprentice. The tragedy of Plagueis wasn't just that he was killed by Sidious, but that his entire approach to immortality was fundamentally flawed. He sought to conquer death through scientific understanding and Force manipulation. But he never understood that true immortality required something the Sith could never provide: selflessness and acceptance of the natural order. This philosophical blindness extended to his relationship with the Force itself. While the Jedi sought to serve the Force and follow its will, Plagueis tried to dominate and control it. He saw the Force's potential strike back against him as a threat to be defended against, rather than a sign that his approach was fundamentally wrong. This adversarial relationship with the very source of his power ultimately doomed him and all who followed his teachings. Yet for all his flaws and ultimate failure, Darth Plagueis remains one of the most significant figures in galactic history. His research unlocked secrets that had been hidden for millennia. His political arrangements set the stage for the fall of the Republic. And his training of Sidious created the Emperor who would rule the galaxy for decades. Without Plagueis, the entire saga of the Star Wars galaxy would have unfolded very differently. The legacy of Darth Plagueis serves as a cautionary tale about the seductive nature of power and the danger of believing that any force, no matter how ancient or fundamental, can be completely controlled. His story reminds us that wisdom and humility are just as important as strength and knowledge, and that the pursuit of power without understanding its true nature inevitably leads to destruction. In the end, Darth Plagueis the Wise was neither truly wise nor ultimately successful in his goals. He was a brilliant researcher and a powerful Sith Lord, but he lacked the fundamental understanding that would have made his knowledge truly valuable. His tragedy wasn't just personal, it was the tragedy of an entire philosophy that sought to dominate rather than understand, to control rather than serve, and to take rather than give. The story of Darth Plagueis continues to echo through the galaxy long after his death, a reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition and the ultimate futility of trying to cheat the natural order. His name has become synonymous with the tragic irony of the Sith, being so powerful they could influence the very foundations of life, yet so flawed they could never escape the cycle of betrayal and destruction that defined their order. This was Darth Plagueis the Wise, master of life and death, teacher of immortality, and victim of his own success. A Sith Lord whose greatest discovery became his most enduring tragedy, and whose shadow stretched across the stars long after his light was extinguished in the darkness of his own apartment, killed by the very apprentice he had trusted above all others. His story stands as one of the most compelling examples of how even the mightiest can fall, and how the pursuit of absolute power inevitably leads to absolute destruction in a galaxy far, far away.